right. Hello, everybody. We're trying to do a simultaneous live lesson and video lesson, so this will be an interesting experience. By the way, everyone here, don't hesitate to ask questions. You're not interrupting the lesson at all. You're making it better for everybody because the people at home can't ask questions, so you'll stand in for their questions too. So what we're going to be doing today is learning about the while loop. A loop is a really, really powerful thing in programming, and once you have a loop, I mean, we kind of already have loops with the draw function that sort of create that repetition that allows us to have animation and stuff. But while loops will let us do some other stuff within that loop as well. So one of the things we're going to be looking at today is just generating a whole bunch of cool patterns just to get practice with while loops. I'll show you a sneak peek. I think I can show you a sneak peek. Yeah, stuff like this. Like these kind of patterns here that would be tedious to draw by hand. You would not want to like code in like that grid and all those lines. So a while loop will let us repeat a line of code over and over again and change it from one time to the next time it gets called to create various patterns. So we're going to try out these different patterns, and we'll probably have some more at the end as well that'll sort of generate on the fly as we get inspiration. And you'll get a chance to generate your own patterns as well. But the main thing to learn about right now is just how does a while loop work and what does it look like. So we'll take a look at a couple examples, and then I'm going to give you one of these patterns to try out yourself and see if you can create it. For those of you at home, I'm going to do sort of a separate video, and for the folks here, I'm going to do a separate sort of lesson for each pattern. I'll say, hey, now try this pattern, the grid, and then you'll go and try it, and then you can, if you don't get it, you can watch the video, or even if you do get it, you can watch the video, or if you're here, you'll just like listen to me talk, and then you can see how it's constructed. Do try it out though. Don't just like sit back and just kind of watch the show. The essential thing is in trying it, because then you'll uncover what it is that you don't understand about it if you're kind of stuck on something. And we'll get into some pretty cool patterns, I think, as we go. So hopefully you'll see sort of the point of this. We probably won't just use loops for making cool patterns though. I mean, we definitely won't. We'll use it to drive other things in our game. So that's going to come later on. But today we're just going to make some patterns. There's no project associated with this. It's just practice. And there will be a quiz coming up on while loops for 1-2. You guys are 1-2, right? Or are you 1-1? I forget. 1-2? So for 1-2, you're in class right now. So it'll be this week. For you 1-1 folks, it'll be when you come back next week. So, whatever project we're working on will involve while loops, and that's gonna give you more and more practice as you go. Okay, let's get started. So a while loop. I got an example while loop. I have this all in tabs. Don't worry about necessarily tabbing it. You could just kind of go down the page as you build different while loops. I put it into tabs just so I could like flip back and forth and have these examples ready to go. So here's a typical example of a while loop. I'm going to zoom in to make sure it's like really obvious what's going on here. Here it is. Here's the while loop. And at first glance, it kind of looks like an if statement. I think that's like the easiest thing to compare it to that you've already seen. If I was to change the while to if, that would just be an if statement, right? If. And it is similar to an if statement. An if statement will just check this condition, and if it's true, it does the code inside of the braces, and if it's false, it doesn't. So that's similar to a while loop, but a while loop, once it's done checking, so it checks this, it says, is this true? And then if it's true, it does this stuff. If it's false, it doesn't do that stuff. But what's special about a while loop is that at the end of the while loop, when it gets to finish that statement, it goes back and checks again the condition and then chooses to repeat it or not. So it's like an if statement that keeps on checking. You can get yourself into trouble with while loops sometimes because you can make a while loop that never stops and just goes on and on and on and on forever. That's called an infinite loop, and that's not a bad thing. It's sort of an achievement you need to unlock at some point in your programming career where you make an unintentional infinite loop. You'll see your project kind of freezes and does nothing when that happens. So watch out for that. If your project freezes, you don't see anything come out, you probably made an infinite loop, so go back and read what you're doing and think about why that is. So that's basically what a while loop does. So let's take a look at the guts of this while loop, line by line. What are the different parts of it? These parts you'll be using for every single pattern that we do today. So when you're making a pattern, I would start with just like even taking this example. You're welcome to type it out right now. Take that example and just kind of think about, well, how am I going to change these different parts? And all of these patterns are designed to make you play with the different parts of the while loop. So let me just go over one part at a time. So the first line here is what's called creating an index variable, or like a counting variable, some kind of variable to keep track of something as you go through. It could just be how many times you've done the loop. It could be coordinates of the things you're drawing. It could be the colors of the things you're drawing. It could be all sorts of different things. And it's nothing special. It's just an int. I use the letter I. Often computer scientists will use I because like a lot of letters are taken, right? X, Y, all these things are kind of taken. But I stands for index, and it's almost always people use it for some kind of counting variable inside of a loop. So if I refer to like the index variable, that's what I'm talking about, some kind of variable that I'm using in my loop. So that's the first part, is creating a some kind of variable for counting, an index variable. Hello. The second part is creating the conditional statement. So this is the while loop here, very much like an if statement, like we said before. This condition is going to be the condition under which it chooses to execute the code inside of this loop. And then, again, the special thing is, at the end of the loop, it checks the condition again and will maybe keep on running it as long as it's true. While this is true is a good way of thinking of it. While that statement is true, in the parentheses, it keeps doing that code over and over and over again. And once it's false, it stops. So that's what we call the conditional statement. It's why it keeps repeating, or how it decides to keep repeating or not. And then the next statement here, this is what's called print line. This is not special to this loop. It's just what this loop does. So after the while loop, or the while statement, then you put in the things that you want to get repeated. So for me in this example, it's the print line statement. And by the way, this is spelled print, like I'm printing my name on my paper. And then this is an L, N. L as in like Lego or lion, but it's a lowercase. And then N as in... I can only think of like random things like Nebuchadnezzar and the name of the spaceship. And what's a good N word here? No, not that one. In Nigeria. Yeah, there we go. I don't know. I can't think of a good N word. But anyways, there we go. So that's what we're repeating here. So what it's going to do is print I. I is our index variable. So our index variable is going to start at 0, and then it's going to print out 0. And if this is an if statement, that's all that would happen. But of course, it's a conditional while loop, so it'll keep on printing that out. So that's what our loop does in this particular instance. But we're going to place this with shapes and all sorts of other stuff as we go. So that's our task that we want to repeat. And by the way, this can be multiple lines. It doesn't have to be just one line. These examples will often be just one lines, but you could put in 100 lines. You could repeat all sorts of different stuff and make it happen over and over again. So that's our task to repeat. And then the last part here, this is what we call the incrementation step. It just changes our index variable, or some variable anyways. It could be multiple variables. And usually, well, hopefully, it moves it towards breaking the condition. So this is just increasing it by 1. And if your incrementation step moves the variable towards breaking the condition, then your while loop will eventually end. And if it doesn't, then you will probably have an infinite loop. So it should probably make it eventually stop. So that's our incrementation step. It almost always comes at the end of a while loop. It doesn't have to. You could technically move it around for whatever purpose you want, but usually that's sort of the order of things. So usually you start off with some kind of index variable declaration. You have your while loop. This is the task to repeat, and this is the conditional statement. So let's run this program and see what happens. So I'll run it, and print line, I guess I should mention, what does it do? It prints in this like black area down here. It's called a console, which sounds like a like a Switch or Xbox or something. But it's this is just like a terminal. I don't know what command line. I don't know what you can call it. A bunch of different things in various operating systems. But for us, it's just a place where text shows up, and we can see like what it outputs. So if I run this, let's see what happens. Whoa! So something comes out here, except that all it is just size, background, stroke rate. Nothing's drawn. And then my actual while loop does the printing. So let's see what happened. It printed out a bunch of numbers. So it printed out 0 all the way to 9. So what do I do to do that? And if you get it, that's great. But I'm going to go through it in detail just in case anyone's like struggling with it. So just hang on if you're feeling like you're ready to move on. Or if you're on YouTube, you can just move me a little bit ahead. So we start at 0, right? That's why this begins at 0. So when we're creating patterns, this is sort of the starting place for our pattern. And then we print out I, so that's why we print out 0. And then the next thing we do is increase I by 1. So I becomes 1, and then it comes back and checks the while loop conditions. Like, oh, is 1 less than 10? Sure is. So then it prints out 1, which is why we get the next one. And then it increases it to 2. And then it comes back to the top again. It checks the condition. Hey, is 2 less than 10? Sure is. So it goes and prints out 2. And it keeps on going, right? It keeps on doing that pattern over and over again. Eventually it gets to 9. It prints out 9. It increases 9 to 10. And then it checks the condition. Is 10 less than 10? No, it's not. It's exactly the same. So it's not less than. So then it doesn't do anything else. It stops. And if there's more statements after here, if there was something else beyond the end of the while loop, like this is line 7, if there was something on line 8, then it would start doing the next thing after that. It would just kind of go on. Just like an if statement, once it's done, it goes on to the next thing afterwards. Same with the while loop. Once it's done, it just goes down the page to do the next thing. So how would we change this to count, instead of from 1 to 10, how would we change it to count to 1 to, I don't know, a million? What would we change in here to count more? If we wanted to count to a million, what's the change we'd make? Anyone just put up your hand or yell it out. I don't care. Which one of these lines would we change? 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7? Oh, 7's kind of boring to change. 3, 4, 5, or 6? If we wanted to count from 0 to a million. Thanks, Mickey. Yeah, line 4. And what was the change we'd make? Yeah, you got it. So we could change 10 to a million. So I'll put in 100,000, 10,000, 100,000, a million. So this is pretty amazing. We haven't added any code, but this task now does so much more. It now counts from 1 or 0 to a million, well, to 999,999. So technically, that would be counting to a million there. So that's one of the great things about while loops. We can accomplish a whole lot of stuff with a small amount of code. There's no more code needed to do more repetitions. Let's see, if I run it, it's going. It might take a while. We're only at the hundred thousands. Oh, I don't know, we're halfway there now. So, it's just kind of churning things out. And it can technically go faster, but this is the speed at which it's going. There we go. Got to 999,999. Imagine you wanted to do that for some reason, and you didn't have while loops. You would have to print out each one. Print 999,000. You print out all these different things. So we can automate tasks that are tedious and boring by using while loops. So that's great. Let's put it back to 10. Oh yeah, thanks, Taiki. It just encounters it in the code. So if I had some code up here, it would happen first. Yeah, and then keep on going to the next thing. You're right. Yeah, you got it. That's a great question. Thanks for bringing that up, Taiki. So while this loop is running, nothing else can happen. It's stuck inside of here. So sometimes while loops will cause lag. If we put this into our draw statement, for example, then you notice there's no void setup void draw right now. If we put this into our draw, it could lock up our frames because the frame can't finish until this while loop finishes. So sometimes that can cause lag in our games, but it's not a problem that we can't solve. We'll definitely be putting these into our draw function and stuff. So absolutely, while this is happening, no pun intended, nothing else will happen. It's just doing this loop over and over and over and over again. It's almost as if this tells us how many times to copy and paste this line of code and then change each time. It's going to put in a million prints, if you will, and it won't go on to anything else before it's done. Okay, so here's another question. What if we wanted to count from 50 to 100? I don't want to count from 0 to, let's say 50 to 99. What will we change? Oops, I put an enter. 4, 5, 6, or 7. Actually, it was like this. 3, 4, 5, or 6. Which line would we change? 3, 4, 5, or 6 if we wanted to count, instead of from 0 to 99, from 50 to 99. Which line is it going to be? 3, 4, 5, or 6? 4? No, it's not going to be 4. So 3? Yeah, 3. It's going to be 3. So this is where our counting variable starts, right? So if we change that to 50, instead of starting at 0, we'll start at 50. So if I run that, you'll see we count, well, you can't really see. There we go, started at 50. If you start at a number that's impossible, so say I start at 999, then this loop can happen 0 times. So if it's 999, it starts the while loop. It's going to check that condition to say, hey, is it less than 100? 999 is not less than 100, so it won't even do it once. So if I run that, you can see like nothing happens. So it's possible for a loop to run 0 times as well. So that's how you can change sort of the start of your counting pattern. And then what if I wanted to count, say, all the even numbers? If I wanted to go up by 2 instead of going up by 1, what would I change? Would I change line 3, 4, 5, or 6? Just yell it out. Yeah, 6. I got the headphones on, so it's hard to hear. Thanks for being nice and loud. So yeah, so I could change this to I equals I plus 2. And if I run that, you'll see that it's going up by, by 2s. 74, 76, 78, and so on. You can even change this by multiplication. You could double it each time. You get like some kind of like pandemic like growth curve happening, or things like that, where you could sort of change this to be like a geometric series, or all sorts of different things. So those are like the primary parts, the 4 parts. The place where you kind of declare the variable and where you start with your pattern. This is the while loop condition, so the condition under which it repeats. This is what you're going to do to repeat it over and over again, and this is how you're changing from how you're changing the index variable from one loop to the next. All right, so I'm going to give you first. Well, actually, we'll do another example, and then I'll give you your first challenge. So the next example, I'm going to just comment this out. I suggest, like, if you're typing in your main tab, just like comment out this bit of code and type in the next one. So I'm going to comment it out here. And by the way, if you want to comment out some code, a really nice trick is to press Control, or I think it's Command on a Mac, and then the /, which is with the question mark on your keyboard. So if you do that, it just comments things out, and you can like toggle back and forth to like uncomment out code. So you can like go like this and turn comments on and off. So I'm just going to comment that out. And I'm going to show you a new pattern here. So I'm going to bring that back. I don't need the save frame. So this is a new while loop. I'll zoom in. So what does it do? Well, it starts at 0. It's going to keep going until the width of my screen, which, by the way, is 1,000 by 1,000. I think I programmed it in. And then it's going to draw a line. And then it's going to increase by 40. So kind of spoil it with the statement down there and with the comment up here. Oh, it draws horizontal lines. But do you see how this could draw horizontal lines? We'll just go through it for a second. So we have our starting at 0, and we're going to keep on going until as long as it's less than width. And then check it out. We're sticking the I counting variable inside of a line function, which is going to control this is the first point of the line and the second point of the line. So it's going to control the y coordinates of a line. So when it starts off, the y coordinates will be 0 and 0. So that's going to be at the top of the screen. And then it's going to change it by 40. And so the next time around, it's going to be 40 and 40. So it'll be 40 pixels down. And the next one will be 80, 80. And then 120, 120. Keep on moving it down over and over again. The 0 and width, those are the x coordinates. So that makes it start, this one here, this point will start on the, let me think, left-hand side of the screen. And this one will start on the right-hand side of the screen because the x coordinate is all the way over. If you typed in a number here, that would be fine. I just typed in width, and then I don't have to think about what that number is, and I could change the size of the screen and so on. And this code does assume I have this stuff up here as well. So just to make sure it's clear, I have background 255. I put stroke weight 3 just to make it really visible, and the size is 1,000 by 1,000. Okay, so let's see this example and see what it looks like. Oh, there we go. A bunch of horizontal lines. And it might be a little confusing that we're changing the y coordinate with I to make horizontal lines, but that's because we're going down the screen, drawing one horizontal line after another. So that's why it's the y coordinate that's changing. So that creates these nice horizontal lines. If we wanted to make them spread out further, we could change this part, right? We could make this, say, 80. If we change that, then it'll increase the gap between them because it's changing instead of 40 a time, 80 a time. Or we can make it smaller. We can make it like change by 10, and then they'll get stuck in there closer. We can make it really tight, and make it 3, and then I think it'll just be black screen at that point. There'll just be so many lines, it's just covering the whole thing. So you can kind of experiment with different things. Whew. And we just draw so many lines, right? That's so great. In the past, we've been kind of stuck with not drawing very many lines. So there's an example of us drawing lines with a while loop. I'll zoom in just to give you, I don't know if I can get it all in one frame here. But here's a great example of a type of loop we're going to do. So now I'm going to give you your first challenge, and I'm going to stop this video. So if you're at home, you're going to just watch, you're going to try the challenge, and you'll watch the next video, and then you'll try the challenge. And you got to try the challenge. You can't just watch the answer, because otherwise you're not going to get the thinking. The thinking is really what you want to do to get this internalized and understood. So the next challenge is going to be pretty much a straightforward sort of, change from that. What if I wanted to make vertical lines? So I'll give you like in class, folks, I'll give you 5 minutes. You just take however much time you want at home, and then I'll show the answer. So try to change that loop. You can just comment it out. I'm going to comment mine out. I'm going to comment out my horizontal loop, and then you just go down the page. You could copy and paste that if you want to use it as your reference, and try to create a loop that'll draw a bunch of vertical lines, and think about what's going to change. Okay, thanks everybody.